Hey there, Jeep fans, Convoy crazies, and Jerry Can junkies. Johnny here, coming at you from a very damp central Pennsylvania. Old Hurricane Ida's coming up through Pennsylvania, hell, and dumping a whole pile of rain up here, but we're safe and sound indoors here, so we're just going to do a Convoy special, financial edition. What does it take financially to go on a convoy? I think first thing we should talk about is, do you have the time off to go on a convoy? If you're not retired, someone like me, it's rough. So just factor that into the equation. So let's start with the middle here, actually. Your registration fees and how long you have to be committed to a convoy. For the Lincoln Highway and the Yellowstone Trail convoy, the registration fee was $300. What does that get you? Well, that gets you a very detailed map set, gets you the planning that went into it. Usually they're a couple years in planning. Gets you all the stops. You bring a convoy into a parking lot or a travel center or something like that, it's very rarely free, and they have to pay for that to rent the parking lot for the time we're there on break. That costs money, and that's what the registration fee goes into. The dinners, when we have dinners, the fee goes into that too. Sometimes the dinners are paid for entirely and they just ask for a donation. So the outreach that we do, getting groups and people on board with that and getting them there, and the recovery. So the recovery vehicles come along with the convoy, and if you have a breakdown, well, you go up on the recovery trailer. So this technically probably isn't covered, but I consider it peace of mind, and it's insurance to me. So that's why I put it on this list here. Recovery, to me, is worth the $300 because you figure what would AAA cost you to haul you somewhere. So I throw that in there with the registration fee. That's what the registration fee also gets you. Now, you don't have to do the entire convoy. You don't have to do all 3,600 miles or 2,100 miles or whatever the convoy is. You can do a regional section. What is a regional section? Well, a regional section is usually 4 to 5 driving days. It's usually a regional section. So anywhere from 500, 600 miles, somewhere in that range. Then again, you don't have to do the entire regional section either, but you have to enter at the beginning of a regional section. You can't just come in the convoy whenever you want to. You have to come in at a certain point. You can depart the convoy at any point you want, as long as you clear it, make sure everyone's on the same page, talk to the CO, and make sure they know you're going to drop out, so recovery isn't chasing you all over the countryside wondering where the hell you went. Okay, so regional section, I wrote this for the Lincoln Highway and the Yellowstone Trail, 2 convoys I've been on so far. They were $150 per regional section. So if you figure you want to do half the convoy, well, you're up there paying for the entire convoy anyway, so you might as well just do the whole convoy, right? Right. So $150 per regional section. Now, the Pacific Northwest convoy, I think it's a 2-week convoy, and I think it was running $200 at the latest I heard. And I don't put that in stone because it could change, but it was $200 for that one. Regional sections. So that's a viable option. You take a week or 2 off work, you come to a regional section, you're back to work in a couple weeks. If you're in my boat. If you're retired and and you're on a fixed income, well, that's still an option too, to do a regional section, especially if you have a nice restored military vehicle. You don't want to put a couple thousand miles on it at a time. Just come do a regional section. Cheaper that way too. Lodging. Let's go down here to lodging. So this entirely, you're free to lodge wherever you want to lodge. You don't have to go to a certain area. As part of the planning, they have people that research all of the campsites where we stop every single night, all the hotels every single night, and that's all given to you as part of your registration package. You'll be getting them in your email. So it's very well planned and executed. The MVPA Historic Convoys program is a very, very well put together program. So some people, if you can afford it, they'll stay in hotels, and that usually runs about $100 a night. You can stay at the Ron. That's dry camping, almost always dry camping, and it's almost always free, but not always free. So, and in addition to that, sometimes the Ron is not the best place to camp if you're in an open vehicle like a Jeep, or you have a tent, you're throwing a tent up or something like that. Sometimes not the best place to stay. So you can plan on going to a campsite or a hotel at least once or twice, even if you plan to dry camp at the Ron, which is rest overnight. Okay? Like I say, the Rons are not always ideal. Campsites usually run to $20 to $50 a night. There's almost always a campsite in range of the Ron and the rally point. The Ron's usually the rally point for the next morning. First gear is usually 7 o'clock in the morning. So we usually get up at 5 in the morning, rally up in order, and we're hitting the road at 7. First gear is at 7, usually. So campsites are an option. Most of the KOAs and places, most of the campsites I've been in around this country are really, really nice when you consider the alternative, putting a tent up in a grassy little area in a parking lot somewhere. Campsites are pretty attractive propositions. Like I say, they run $20 to $50 a night. So if you run the numbers on that, a 24-day convoy, if you're staying in a hotel, it's going to be $2,400. I'd have to take out a mortgage or a loan or something. Stay at the Ron, it's going to be $0 to $100. Some of the Rons require a payment. So some of the Rons are like in a county fairgrounds or something like that, where they expect you to pay for your site. So just factor that into the equation. It's going to be 0 to 100. And then if you stay at campsites for the whole convoy, like some people do, it's going to be somewhere in the range of $480 to $600, depending. Okay, so that's not horrible. If you mix it up a little bit between the Rons and the campsites, you can get down the road for $300, $400, $500 for lodging. Fuel. This is going to depend entirely on what kind of fuel mileage you get out of your rig. I was getting between 15 and 17 mile a gallon. So 15 out. So Pennsylvania and South Dakota for me was 1,377 miles at 15 mile a gallon. That was 91.8 gallons to get out to South Dakota to the beginning of the convoy, this Yellowstone Trail convoy. South Dakota to Conneaut was 2,100 miles, and I calculated it at 17 mile a gallon at 35 mile an hour, pretty much 25, 35, 40 when we had to get caught up. That was 123.5 gallons of gasoline. Then Conneaut to home was a short jaunt at 200 miles at 16 mile a gallon. That was 12.5 gallons. For a total for the convoy, that was Pennsylvania to South Dakota and then back to Pennsylvania, was 227.8 gallons. You figure $3 a gallon, more or less. Sometimes it was under $3 and sometimes it was over $3. Just use that as a figure. You're looking at $683.40 for gasoline for a rig that's running 15 to 17 mile a gallon. Now that is all the way out and all the way back. You can figure you're still going to be in that range if you trailer your rig to the rally point for the convoy, and then they are attached. Your rig is either going to be attached to the recovery unit if it can haul a vehicle, or it's going to be attached to support. Now I suppose that's your choosing whether you want to use it as a convoy recovery vehicle or not. But then you have to figure your rig is splitting in half and you're going to have to fuel 2 vehicles. So take that into consideration. You can pretty much estimate what this is going to be before you even leave home. That's just a nice little benchmark to think about. So you got $300 for registration. That's assuming you're taking a whole convoy. $600, $700 for gasoline. There's $1,000, and then your lodging. $500 for me. I'm just throwing numbers out there. You're $1,500 in for a convoy, for a whole convoy. Food. Let's erase this, and I'll write some more gibberish on the board here. Okay, real quick. Let's say you're in a heavy. 4 mile a gallon. I just computed this at 4 mile a gallon, and I know you guys probably get more than that in your deuces, but a deuce with a tool shed on the back or communication shelter is probably not going to get no 15 mile a gallon, you know. So computing this at 4, you're in at 919 and a quarter gallons of diesel. If I were driving a heavy that got 4 mile a gallon from Pennsylvania to South Dakota and then back, that's the number that I'm looking at in gallons. So diesel's over 3, 2,700 at least in diesel fuel. So think about that too. I will say this, convoys are not for the faint of heart. You have to be tough. I don't mean like Popeye tough. I mean tough upstairs. They're grueling, but fun. Hey there, I have to take out the garbage. Food. Now don't make the same mistake that I made twice now. 2 convoys in a row and bring a whole mess of food. You're gonna be fed so much that any food you bring along with you is gonna be wasted space, wasted volume, and the weight of the food, you're paying to haul that food across the country. So don't bring a whole lot of food. In fact, don't bring any food, because there's so many Walmarts and stuff across this country. You can go get food every night when we stop. Almost every single night you stop, you can go somewhere to get some food. Things you do want to think about bringing are an inverter, some sort of power supply. And I've mentioned this before, particularly if you're in an M series vehicle, it's 24 volts. I highly recommend you have an inverter of some sort. Some people bring generators if they can afford the space. They take up a lot of space and you got to feed them. You got to worry about them being stolen. They're noisy, irritating. An inverter does everything that I need. Heck, I even run my hair clippers off of my inverter, off of my little 12 volt battery. So I charge my radio on the inverter, charge my phone on the inverter. The GPS runs off of the 12 volt. So yeah, think about that. I don't know. I was going to say something smart, but I don't need to. You get the idea. Think about that. Okay? Now, back to the whiteboard. So, you're going on a convoy. You've committed to yourself. You say, I'm doing it. Thumbs up to you, and I look forward to seeing you on a convoy. But it's not like, well, you just show up at this certain place and time and you get in line and we're going to give her hell. No. Like I said, it's a very, very organized and planned, pre-planned event. It takes years of planning. And whenever you do send your registration money in, you're going to begin to get comms packages in your email folder. I think they can do them via snail mail, but it's a lot easier to just provide an email address and get them over the email, because it's a lot of information. You're going to get stopping info for the convoy. Now that's detailed information of every town and every day by date that the convoy stops, where they're stopping, and what town it is. You're also going to be getting a spreadsheet with the order of march on it. You will know in advance where you are in the convoy. And that gives also the driver's information and telephone numbers in case you need to get a hold of somebody. You're going to start getting your lodging set. It doesn't all come out at once. It comes out over a few different comms packages. That is every hotel, campground, the RON information, where they are, phone numbers, reservation information, all that stuff is in the lodging information. So there were a couple of times where in hindsight, I probably should have made reservations in advance, but sometimes you almost don't realize it until you're already there. But keep that in mind. You have an opportunity to pre-register for hotel rooms or campgrounds far in advance of first gear of the convoy. Information is embedded in the comms packages. You're probably you've probably read all this anyways, but I'm just, bear with me, I'm going at my speed, which is slow. So various information on the convoy. financial information and stuff like that, information on the planning and execution of the convoy. Any kind of various information is included in the comms packages. You're also going to be getting some different forms, gear list. You're going to be getting a spare parts list for your vehicle. It's just it's a good list. A general gets you thinking about what I should probably bring for my vehicle. Tell you what, those M37s seem to go through a lot of axles. They break axles. So if you have an M37, M43, and if you have an axle laying around, you probably should bring it because they seem to go through them. Stuff like that. Think of, so for the Jeeps, you're probably going to want to bring probably a cap, rotor, condenser, spark plug wire, spark plug, stuff like that. Stuff that you're not going to be able to just run down to O'Reilly's or Advance and get on the convoy. And that being said, almost every night there was an auto parts store somewhere. And whenever we stop for our rest period, worst case scenario, you're going to be on the recovery trailer till our rest period. And then different people on the convoy will attack you like flies trying to help you fix your vehicle. So don't feel like you're going to be abandoned, because you will not be abandoned on a convoy. It's all for one and one for all. So just keep that in mind. But that, bring some parts. Bring some parts. You're probably going to want to bring a brand spanking new tube, an inner tube. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space. Stuff like that. Think about it. First aid kit tells you what you should have in your first aid kit. And that goes down into your compulsory items that you have to have on your vehicle, which is part of the vehicle inspection. What else was I going to talk about? I was going to talk about the sheriff. Inspection. And I don't know what else. But as part of the vehicle inspection, you need to have these following items on your vehicle. You need a high-vis vest. Anytime after first gear at 7 in the morning, where we stop and there is a risk of being struck by civilian traffic, you need to have your high-vis vest on, or else you're going to be fined by the sheriff, which I'm going to talk about shortly. Anytime we stop and shut the vehicles down, the first thing you need to do is chalk the vehicle. Because if she pops out of gear and you run over a 2-year-old looking at the army trucks, that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare. You need a fire extinguisher, and you need to be able to get to it. And as I mentioned, you need a first aid kit. In the Lincoln Highway Convoy and the Yellowstone Trail, we intercepted the MVPA National Convention. If you guys watched my Lincoln Highway videos, we departed from the York Convention, York, Pennsylvania, 2019. And here on the Yellowstone Trail, we intercepted the convention in South Bend, Indiana, in the middle of our convoy. So that was kind of cool. And in the comms packages, they'll talk about stuff, reminders to register for the trips and stuff like that are a part of the convention. And then special event planning too in the comms package. And that is special events for the convoy, like the visit we went to. We went to the Gilmore Museum. That was talked about in the comms packages. And then we went to the Haggerty Garage there in Traverse City. And that information was in the comms package. So this is a general overview of what you get in a comms package. And you're going to have all this information far in advance of first gear. So, my arm's getting tired. I'm about to switch hands here in a minute. So that's what you're going to get in your comms package. Okay? Next scene. Hey, we're coming at you from the other hand here. I'm going to have to switch my hat the other way now. Okay. Last thing I really want to talk about is the safety inspection. Some people kind of get worked up about the safety inspection thing. It's not really that big of a deal, but at the same time, is your vehicle safe enough to run across the country and not be a liability to not only the convoy, but to John and Jane Doe driving down the highway? Is your vehicle safe? The sorts of things they're going to be looking for whenever they do your safety inspection, you're going to get a tech sticker on your vehicle to okay you to participate in the convoy. So don't think you're going to sneak through this, because you won't. Your tires okay? Are your lights working and functioning? Turn signals, brake lights, all that stuff. Do your wipers function? Do your brakes function? I mean, do you have a propeller shaft that's fallen off of it? You know, stuff like that. Broken leaf springs, etc. And massive oil leaks. We had one guy that didn't want to go on the convoy this Yellowstone Trail because he had a couple of drops of oil coming out of his Jeep. You know what they say, if it's leaking oil, it still has oil. Don't worry about a couple drops. It's massive oil leaks. You have a bad rear main seal or something like that, you're putting serious oil down that they're looking for, okay? Just wanted to put that out there. And the very last thing is the sheriff. The Convoy Sheriff is a way to have a little fun on the convoy, in addition to keeping safety at the forefront of your mind. So if you forget to put your chalks down, you're getting a fine. If you run over your chalks, you're getting a fine. If you leave your blinker on too long going down the road, you're probably going to get a fine. Not wearing your high-vis vest out of your vehicle, probably going to get a fine. If you're just generally irritating like I am, sooner or later you're going to get a fine. So stuff like that. That money goes back into the convoy donations. So when we stop at a Legion, for instance, and they provide us a really nice meal, well, that money's going to be donated to that Legion. So it's a positive way for the convoy to have a little fun, support the Legions and the VFWs of this country, and keep everybody safe. So hope that answered a couple of questions for you. Gonna want to set aside a couple $1,000s if you want to go on a convoy like I do. And well, I hope to see you out there. I'm thinking, I looked in my vacation time. Okay, so here at Penn State, I have this vacation thing where I can go in and put a date. I just put next year in, sometime next year before the Pacific Northwest Convoy, to see what vacation time I will have then. And it looks like I might be driving to Idaho next year in the old Warhorse, so stay tuned for that. And I hope you guys have a nice autumn, nice winter, and well, I hope we see you out there sometime. If you have any questions, you know where to put them. I'll answer. See you guys.